Let's talk about education. Have you ever stopped to think if school is actually preparing kids for the world they're going to face? Well, today we're going to unpack a new way of thinking about it called the competency-based curriculum, or CBC for short. Let's dive in and see what it's all about. Think back to when you were in school. How much of what you crammed into your brain was just for the test? The whole idea behind the CBC really starts with this one big question. How can we teach skills for life, not just facts for an exam? And this slide really nails the difference. We're talking about a huge shift, right? Moving away from just memorizing stuff and sitting passively over to a world of hands-on experience and active problem solving. It's all about swapping out teaching for the test for learning for life. So, you might be asking, why the big change? Well, the CBC was basically born from this feeling that the old system was just too focused on getting high test scores, sometimes at the expense of real-world skills and actually understanding stuff. And this quote right here, it just gets right to the heart of it. This isn't just about adding a few new subjects to the schedule. No, this is a totally new way of teaching. The spotlight shifts completely onto the student, with hands-on learning and a real focus on building character. Okay, so if we're all about teaching skills now, which skills are we talking about? The entire CBC is actually built on a foundation of 7 core competencies. Think of these as the essential building blocks for, a successful life and career in today's world. So let's take a look. Some of these you'd probably expect, right? Communication, collaboration, critical thinking. Makes sense. But check out the others. Citizenship isn't just a government class anymore. It's about really understanding your place in a community and learning to learn. That's the meta skill, right? The ability to teach yourself pretty much anything. But it's that last one that might just be the most powerful. Self-efficacy. This is such a game changer. It's not just about what you know how to do, it's about what you believe you can do. It's about building that inner confidence, that grit to take on a tough challenge, whether it's in a classroom or, way out in the real world. All right, so that's the big picture theory. But what does this actually look like day to day in a classroom? Let's zoom in and break down a real lesson plan to see how all these ideas come to life. So we're going to look at a grade 3 lesson. The subject area is environmental activities, and the topic is super practical, making water safe to use. This is where all those big ideas get really concrete. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This looks like a lot of teacher speak, SLO, KIQ, what does it all mean? But just stick with me for a second. We're going to unpack each piece, and you'll see it's actually a really simple and, honestly, a pretty brilliant roadmap for a lesson. So every lesson starts with a super clear, practical goal. They call it the SLO, or Specific Learning Outcome. And notice what it says. It's not learn about filtration. It's construct a water filter. The whole focus is on doing something, not just knowing something. Then you have the spark. This is the KIQ, or Key Inquiry Question. So instead of the teacher starting with a long lecture, the whole lesson kicks off with a question. And just like that, the students are turned into little investigators and problem solvers right from the start. And what's so cool is that this one activity is hitting so many of those big goals. The students are using critical thinking to figure out how a filter even works, they're using collaboration to build it as a team, and they're using creativity to figure out what local materials they can use. It's all happening at once. And here's the lesson in action. It's this simple, really powerful flow. First, you look at a problem, the dirty water. Then you learn about some possible solutions. And finally, you get to work with your team to build your own. That is learning by doing in its purest form. So we've seen how one single lesson works, but the CBC is way bigger than that. So let's zoom back out and see how this all connects to things like grades and the world outside the school doors. All right, this is the big question, right? If it's not all about acing the final exam, then how in the world do you know if students are actually learning? Well, the answer is that assessment isn't just a one-time thing at the end. It's part of the whole learning process. You can kind of think of it like sports. Assessment for learning is like the coach giving you tips during practice. Assessment as learning is you watching the game tape afterwards to see how you could improve. And assessment of learning, well, that's the final score, but it's often a big project, like that finished water filter, that shows what you can really do. Now, here's one of the most powerful ideas in the whole system. The idea that learning shouldn't be trapped inside the 4 walls of a classroom. It's actually designed to break down those walls and connect directly with a student's home and community. So get this,
The lesson isn't really over when the bell rings. The homework for the student is to go home and share what they just learned with their family. How cool is that? It makes learning real, it makes it relevant, and it makes it a shared family experience.
So look, if you remember just one thing from all of this, make it this. The CBC is all about one simple but really profound shift. It's moving from valuing what you know to empowering kids with what they can do. It's about building real capability, not just testing memory.
And that really leaves us with a huge question to think about. What actually happens when you raise an entire generation of creative, collaborative problem solvers? What does that mean for the future of our jobs, our communities, our world? Definitely something to chew on.